To you too.
How are you?
I'm alive and kicking. Now I think I'm kicking hard, but I'm still kicking.
That's a blessing to us all.
Yeah.
I want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me.
Oh, listen, I appreciate you young people. I really do.
You're a legend. Like you're a legend. My friends and I talk about like how courageous you were to just like live your life and live your life out loud.
I tell people I'm just a little old lady in tennis shoes, getting in everybody else's business and having a damn good time doing it.
That's amazing. When I want to get really conversational with you.
Okay.
And for me, you remind me so much of my upbringing because I'm originally from my mom always gets on to me. She's like, stop saying you're from Turl, Texas. But I was born
in Texas.
Turl, Texas.
Well, yeah, okay.
I grew up in Turl, Texas. I was born in Dallas, but I grew up in Turl, Texas. And my grandma raised me.
Okay.
And I love having the opportunity to talk to your generation because you guys are so wise. Okay. And especially being a black female, I want to just learn from you today.
Oops.
You know, you're the queen, you're Juneteenth, like you are everything for that.
Come on, and just remember, I'm just like your grandma. I'm just a little older, like your aunts, people in that neighborhood. That's me.
Tell us. I want everyone in my generation to learn from you today. So tell us about your upbringing. Tell us about everything.
You want to hear that? Because I'd have to go way back and tell you that my grandpa and my grandma left Cotton Valley, Louisiana, going to Texarkana, Arkansas, because he'd acquired 40 acres of land in Arkansas, Texarkana, and 40 in Ben Lomond, Arkansas. They had maybe 5 children. And my mom says, you know, it was an overnight trip and they stopped with friends, and the lady kept saying to my grandmother, oh, Miss Broadus, give me this little girl. Oh, she's so pretty. Miss Broadus, give me this. And my mom thought that her mother was going to give her away. And she was so glad when they left that house and continued that trip on Texarkana. Well, there was a house on the 40 acres. My grandpa, my grandma couldn't hire hands, so they raised them. There were 19 children in that family, 3 sets of twins. And so, when my mom married and moved to Marshall, Texas, first I have to tell you that my grandpa would bring other people to my grandmother and say, Matsy, give him a place to stay, feed him, find a job for him. Always bringing somebody to my grandmother to look after. And when my mom married and moved to Marshall, he'd do the same thing. Send somebody to her and tell her. Keep them till they can get on their feet. So, it started way back. And I don't know whether you want to hear.
I want to hear that because I feel like we need strength still in this generation. We need some values. We need some morals. We need that foundation.
Let me tell you this story. My Uncle Z, who was named for my grandfather, Zachary, asked my grandfather to let him go to Marshall to Bishop College. My mom wanted to go to school in Marshall. She and my Uncle Z were real close together. They were born in April, and everybody thought they were twins. They weren't. But Grandpa wouldn't let her go. She kept asking and asking, and he wouldn't let her go. Finally, she says, well, if I can't go to school where Z is, I'm going to marry Judge Dunbar. And Judge Dunbar was the doofus in the neighborhood. Grandpa finally let her go.
So,
She and both of them didn't have enough education to go to Bishop, so they went to Central High School. And that's where she met my dad. And he asked her to marry him, and she said he'd have to ask Papa. You know, she wasn't interested in marrying him. Papa says all right. But he followed them back to Texarkana because my grandparents had to come and get her. She got sick at school. And he asked my grandpa if he could marry her. But now my grandpa was mischievous. You know what he said? You sure you want this second? As if he had some others that he could, choose from. So he gave his consent. But my mom told my dad, not marrying you until you build me this house. And she drew this house on a piece of paper for him. She didn't hear from him for 2 years. He came back and told her he'd build that house. And so they were married and moved. The house was built in Marshall, Texas. Oh, they had some ideal time. It was a beautiful marriage. The Depression, he lost his job. The house burned. They built a 3-room on the back of the lot they were going to rebuild. But he left for Fort Worth to find work. And he was going to send for his family. But he never got around to it. And finally she sold all the possessions to get railroad fare for she and the 3 children she had. And if she arrived in Fort Worth on Saturday, she was cooking in somebody's kitchen on Sunday. We spent 6 weeks on the west side of town where we attended Cooper Street School. It was a school built for blacks on a city dump. Well, my parents got together and we moved to the south side where we walked to Gwen School. My mom had a fall on the city bus and she was compensated, and they took that money and paid down on the house. Oh, she had it fixed up so nice. Except on the 19th of June, people started gathering, and the paper said it was 500 of them, and that the police couldn't control the mob. And when my dad came with a gun, the police told him if he busted a cap, they'd let the mob have us. My parents sent us to friends several blocks away, and they left under cover of darkness, but those people drug the furniture and stuff out of that house. They just did horrible things. My parents never, ever discussed it with us. Never, ever. But they worked. They worked. They worked. They bought another house. I finished high school when we lived at 926 East Terrell. I finished at 16. And my mom had all these plans for me to go back to Marshall, to Wiley College. I got married. Oh, she was so disappointed. She wouldn't even go to the wedding. And it took me 4 years and 4 babies to realize I was going to have to raise my husband too. You may not know, but men don't seem to mature as fast as women. And so I cut my losses. I went back home to my mother with 4 small children and said to her, I'm ready to go to college now. And she says, I've got no money to send you to nobody's college. I'll keep your children. Oh, I worked like a dog to get the money to go to college in the fall. I spent it. I bought the children a television so she wouldn't have to run after them. And I went to that school without a dime. They put me to work in the college bookstore. I didn't quit this job in Fort Worth because I didn't know what was going to happen. So my mom would work the job during the week. I would come back and work it on the weekend. She would collect the check. Nobody knew the difference. We all looked alike, you know. But I got through in 3.5 years. I could stay down there 4 years. And when I came back to Fort Worth and got a job teaching, it paid $2,000 a year. Now I couldn't feed 4 children on $2,000, so I got another job. If I clocked in at school at 8 and out at 3, there was a car waiting for me, and I clocked in at Conveyor. It's called something else now. And I clocked out at 4. Clocked in at 4, clocked out at 12. I'd still been working like that, but they laid off a bunch of them. And when I made some money and was going to buy my own home, I was going to stay with my mother till I got it just right. My mother said, you better get them youngers and get out of my face. She began to travel and take cruises and do all the things she had wanted to do. When we moved in the house, by this time, I have a daughter with children. And I got a call at school one day that my house was on fire. And I got that call and got home. We lost a grandchild in that fire. I don't know how to tell you that we survived, but we did. I do know, because we've had a faith in God that our grandparents and our parents had instilled in us all those years. And would you know, my son, oldest son, when he got married and had a home, that was destroyed by fire. I just know we were being tested. I know we were, but we have survived. I worked as a homeschool counselor, and they used to call us a visiting teacher, but we didn't teach. It was our responsibility to get the shoes for the kid who couldn't come to school, or clothes, or see that the lights were on, or that they had a place to stay. When I retired, that followed me. People still needed food, and they still needed a place to stay. And so, I joined a food bank. It burned. And there's this huge building behind my house that they had up for sale for $1.3 million. And I asked for it. And they leased it to us for $4,000 a month. And I nearly had a hemorrhage. Why are we going to give it a fuck? But we paid it for 11 months. And do you know the month we didn't have that $4,000, those people came to us and said, seems like you're doing a good job out here, and gave us that $1.3 million building. It has 20,000 square feet of freezer space. It services 500 families a day. And so, people standing in line, I polled them, and 66 of them said they wouldn't mind farming. And we concentrated on those who'd been incarcerated and couldn't find a job. And so, we have a farm. It's called Opal's Farm. I asked the Trinity River Authority, they gave me the use of 13 acres of land. We got the best farm manager in the world. He gives some of the produce to the food bank, he gives some to the WIC program, and he takes the rest to the farmer's market on Saturday. You gotta see our farm, because it's off the chain. Well, when I was about 89 years old, I said, I don't think I've done enough. I'm healthy, might be old. And Dr. Myers had recruited me for Juneteenth. Now, we've been doing Juneteenth in Fort Worth. Ooh, we did Juneteenth in Fort Worth in a little old park called Sycamore Park. One time, we had 10,000 people on a 3-day period, the paper said. 10,000 people. 10,000 on the first day, 10,000 the second day, 10,000 the third, 30,000 people in a 3-day period. Do you hear? Well, I've been introduced to Miss Rolla, who was my mentor. And we took exhibits to the park about Juneteenth. People having so much fun. They didn't pay much attention to the exhibits. Park closed at 10 o'clock. All they did was to pull a plug. You know, if the lights go out, you're supposed to go home. Do you know, I got on a flatbed truck and put that plug back in, and we partied till dawn. But, like I say, I was about 89, and I figured, must be something else I can do. And so, I gathered the minister in my church, and there was a county commissioner and a school board member, and I don't know, the musicians, I don't know how many people, and they gave me this send-off, and I started walking 2.5 miles to symbolize that in Texas, the enslaved didn't know they were free until General Gordon Granger, made his way to Galveston with 7,000 colored troops to tell the people there that they were free. Now, plantation owners had brought their slaves to Texas because they knew when the Civil War was over, they'd go back and get them. But it didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that. And so, when the slaves were told they were free on the 19th day of June in 1865, we started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since. Oh. And so, I left that church, walking 2.5 miles. And the next day, I started there, and I walked 2.5 miles. I walked from Fort Worth to Arlington to Grand Prairie to Box Springs to Joppa. 2.5 miles each time. But my team said we weren't going to do it like that because somebody had promised us an RV, and they decided that what I was doing was too political. Can you believe it? And so my team says you will only go where you are invited and where they have Juneteenth celebrations. And so I was invited all over these United States. Shreveport, Texarkana, Little Rock. Let's see. Chicago. I was invited up to Denver and Colorado Springs and St. Louis. I was invited to Atlanta and the Carolinas. I was invited all over. Well, if I left September 2016, I actually got to Washington January 2017. We had asked President Obama to walk with us from the Frederick Douglass House to the Capitol. But he was in Chicago. I didn't get what I wanted, but I didn't give up. We started a petition that garnered 1,500,000 signatures, and we took that to Congress. And we were prepared to take another 1,500,000 signatures to Congress when we got the call from the White House to come to Washington. And we saw the bill made law. How I wish Dr. Myers had been there, because he sort of recruited me. Not that we weren't doing Juneteenth, but he was adamant about it. In fact, he was responsible for 43 of the states having Juneteenth celebration. He was a medical doctor, he was a Baptist minister, and he was a jazz musician all rolled into one. And Doc should have been at the White House to see what actually happened. Well, I was overjoyed. I was humbled. I didn't know how to act. But we realized that there are things, so many things that still need our attention. So we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're going to work at joblessness and homelessness and health care that some people can get and others can't. We're going to see about climate change. If we don't do something about climate change, we all going to hell in a handbasket. You know, there's so much more to Juneteenth than a festival. Because when the enslaved were free, there were so many freedoms they gained, but there was about 12, and I try to remember them. They were able to read and write. They hadn't been afforded that privilege. They were able to keep their children, and the children weren't sold away from them. They were able to dress like they wanted. And if you know black folks, they love to dress. They dress to the nines. They learned to be a part of the legislature. They gained so many freedoms. They gained so much. But we must teach our young people that it's their responsibility to see that more things are required, because we're not free yet. Well, all these things that need to be attended to, we aren't free. And I keep telling them, we're going to celebrate. Let's celebrate from the 19th of June to the 4th of July. We weren't free on the 4th of July. And I admonish young people and old. We know people who are on the same page we are on. And so they need to change their minds. They have to do it one person at a time. And it's not going to happen overnight. You've got to make people understand that working together we can get more accomplished. We can alleviate the situations that means we aren't free. We can alleviate those such, but we have to change people's minds. And if we took 1,500,000 signatures to Congress and we were ready to take that many more to them, 3 million people on the same page, we could turn this country around.
Oh. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's delightful talking to you.
Thank you so much.